Welcome back to the Tea and a Butty podcast. I'm Dominic.
And I'm Erica.
And today's episode's going to be about Brexit, which is a banned word now. I mean, it's happened. And what has happened in Britain, what's changed in Britain since Brexit?
Yeah, because I had that question, didn't I?
Yeah.
It's just like...
What has changed? What's happened?
Different? Well, because the thing is your dad lives in Spain, but is a British citizen.
Yes.
So I just wonder, but he's going to be allowed to live out there.
Yeah, right? Yeah. They're not going to kick him out or anything like that. It's...
But, Brexit was just going on for so long, after it was decided, it took
2016,
it
took about 4 or 5 years. I think it went into effect on the 1st of January of this year. Yeah, that was it. It's happened. It's no more transition periods or anything like that, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, there's still transition periods for certain things here and there, and I think the UK is trying to extend that with the EU, and the EU are like, no, that's it,
Yeah.
It went into effect, and... Because everybody thought, January the 1st, it's going to be delays, and, we instantly can't get anywhere and whatever,
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of questions about it because with British imports and then, like I said, Dominic's dad living in Spain and stuff. So I was just like, you know what, let's do a podcast about this. But you had to research it.
I had to research it quite, yeah.
Because I mean, being in America, this is not something that anybody really talks about over here.
No. It's,
And it's quite a complex topic, really, because it has been going on for so long.
I mean, the vote to have Brexit happened in 2016, which was a long time ago in politics, a very long time ago, because, they always say a week is a long time in politics. It's like, that was years ago. And since then, it's been like, we've had... Well, David Cameron resigned as Prime Minister when that vote happened.
Right.
Because he was the one that triggered that referendum in the first place, because he was confident that, everyone's going to vote, it's going to be a landslide to stay in the EU. And it didn't, it wasn't a landslide. It was very close.
Yeah.
It was
much like the
52% to like 49%. Yeah.
This past year. Yeah.
It wasn't a landslide to leave, but the leave, and so that was it. We're leaving the EU. That's it. So Theresa May dragged through negotiations.
Yeah.
Then, Boris Johnson, after she stepped down, Boris Johnson became Prime Minister. And, Brexit finally happened. They signed a deal, and that's it. It's done.
Yeah. And you guys, we are not pretending to be experts on
this topic. We're not experts
whatsoever.
at all on this topic. I mean, we're so far removed from it, too.
Yeah.
We're just keeping up with what's being said on the news,
But I'm interested in, what it actually means, what leaving the EU actually means for Britain. So that's kind of where this discussion came from. And so you've done a little bit of research and found some things that are going to be different now that Britain has Brexited.
Yes, now Britain is part of, on its own, standing alone, as they wanted. The only, the things that are going to change is it's just going to make life a little bit more difficult in some ways, and maybe a little bit better in others.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few major things that are going to change, which are travel, trade, and status, for people.
Yeah.
Which, and researching the passports are going to change. They're not going to have EU on them anymore. They're not going to have a European Union. They're going to be blue instead of burgundy.
Yeah.
And all this kind of stuff. Trade, what'll happen is once the UK comes out of the EU common market, it'll be able to make deals with Australia and the US and other countries, which it wasn't able to do before because the EU was doing that for them on their behalf, you know?
Yeah.
It's going to have to completely new deal. So without the EU regulations, and, you know, that's what people say it's a positive thing because it'll boost the economy and, you know, we'll be able to get trade on our terms and whatever. And it's kind of
You'll be able to eat all the unhealthy crap that Americans
well, yes,
eat.
the goods, yeah, that kind of stuff too. But it's kind of like, yeah, you know, you think about it and it's just kind of like, well, is that such a good thing? You know, because a lot of people, when Brexit was happening, everybody's like, well, yes, we should be out of the EU because we have regulations from the EU on silly things like what wattage your vacuum cleaner is and all this kind of stuff. You know, there was like, this is all silly and processed foods, obviously.
Is it silly, though? Because I'm sure it's just helping with the energy crisis in the world.
It's helping with the energy crisis in the world, yeah. And if the I foresee the UK trying to re-enter the EU at some point in the future.
Yeah.
Because it'll be like, wait a minute, this is a better deal for all of us, you know?
Well, wasn't there a thing like Stronger Together? Wasn't that a...
Better Together was the campaign,
Together.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, it was Stronger Together. That was somewhere. Maybe that was here.
Stronger Together.
But it's true, isn't it? You know, you are there is strength in numbers, as they always say.
Well, yeah. I mean, they joined the UK entered the EU, or the EEC as it was, the European Economic Community in the I think it was like 1973. And ever since then, it's been kind of like, you know, we you know, it was kind of like we were doing it on our own terms too. You know, it's like, because when everybody changed over to the euro in like the late 90s,
yeah,
in all the European countries. Before that, they all had their own currencies, Spain, France, and all that, and Ireland and everything. And in the late 90s, then it was okay. We were all going euro, and Britain was like, nah, we're going to keep our pounds, thank you very much.
Yeah, because when you were shopping, I think in London they did accept the euro in some places.
In some stores they were like, okay, yeah, you're
but everywhere else, not really, no.
No, if you go like further inland and
Wales.
No. And there was discussion obviously on it, and ultimately it was decided, no, we can't do that because they won't allow the Queen on it. And
was it joining the EU that made Britain go metric?
Yes.
Yeah,
that was like one of the conditions. But again,
right, because we have the imperial system in this country because of Britain. So Britain likes to
metric
on the internet, like, kind of call out Americans for you're the only country that uses you. It's just like, yeah, we use it
Britain
because you guys used to use it.
It's a strange country in that it picks and chooses what it uses.
Right.
And the metric system, for instance, it picks and chooses when to use that. For temperature, fine. You know, like, what's the weather? It's 9 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
But it's like, what's miles per hour? They still use miles per hour instead of kilometers. Sometimes units of like cooking, you know, weight measurement, stones, you know, is still in effect. Whereas it would be kilos or kilograms or anything like that.
I was going to say, we don't really use stones over here.
No, pounds, yeah.
Yeah. We use pounds, yeah. For weight. For measuring weight.
Yeah, for measuring weight, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very confusing in that thing where Britain is just like, nah, we're going to keep using this. Oh, we'll just use this because we prefer this.
Because I remember your dad one time saying, oh, yeah, I still figure the temperature in Fahrenheit. Yeah.
Because it's easier for me.
I still have to, like, convert it over when I see it because he grew up learning Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it must have been annoying for people when Britain joined the EU and switched over to the metric system, let's say, you know, people who didn't learn that and then their kids were going to school, like you even,
well,
right?
I never
You went to school and learned the metric system.
Yeah.
So, like, your dad helping you with schoolwork and stuff must have just been like, what in God's name? I don't know this, you know, like.
Yeah, no, I remember him a couple of times going, oh, I don't know what that means. I actually can vividly remember him getting frustrated with the units of measurement and stuff, and sometimes like, because I've got to convert that to, imperial,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, again, it's like, and again, some people in Britain use that, it's like it's half and half.
Yeah.
It's a very like, we're only half in the EU and half out on our own,
Always had one foot in and one foot out.
Yeah, that's what and I mean, that's possibly because, the people who were hardcore for Brexit and, getting out of the EU were like, oh, well, we've never had anything in common with France. We fought wars against France and Germany and everything like that, and we've never had anything more in common with them. And
those
it's
kind
just
of
like,
arguments are just ridiculous.
And well, it's ridiculous because it's like we have a lot more in common with France and Germany and everyone else in the EU than we do with the USA, for instance, or Canada, or Russia, or even Australia. Well, Australia, not really, because I mean that's mainly made up of British descendants at this point, and they still kind of base their system on the UK system. But it's like, yeah, I mean, people making that argument, it's like, yeah, it would have been better to remain in the EU for, a little bit more stability. Because now that Britain, it's like these people think like, oh yeah, Britain's coming out and we're stronger and we're on Britain's, a rising global power, and it's like the empire days are gone, Yeah. You're not going to have this, like, we're not going to be taking over Australia again. We're not going to be taking over India or most of Africa and whatever, It's just like it's gone. It's like we're just now like a small power.
Yeah.
That has some influence.
I can't see, getting back to your trade section of your notes.
Yeah.
I can't see Britain, though, going back to the kind of how do you say it, unregulated goods that we have in this country. I mean, there are regulations, don't at me, but
there are regulations.
There are regulations in this country, but they're just not as strict. I mean, that is a fact. They're not as strict in this country as they
can
are
get
in
Europe. They can get away with a lot more over here than they can in the EU.
Yeah.
In the European Union.
And I just can't
food-wise and stuff,
I mean, because obviously things are the way they are in this country because of money. I'm sure it's cheaper than being healthy and
high fructose corn syrup and all that kind of stuff. It's
they're cheaper ingredients. So
hydrogenated oil.
I mean,
and
I
all
hate
that
to say
kind
it, but maybe I could envision Britain being that greedy, but maybe not. Maybe
I don't know.
I think the people, the British public,
there's going to be some hangover of the EU rules.
Yeah,
there.
I think the British public will demand it. They're not going to let regulations kind of slip like that. I don't think.
I think what will happen is they'll do like goods and trading, and this is because the deal with the US, the trade deal with the US, is still ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like what do the two countries have to offer each other in the way of goods? Really?
Yeah.
When you think about it, I mean.
Britain and the US.
Britain and the US, yeah. When you think about it,
nothing. We don't make anything over here.
Nothing is made in either country. I mean, nothing is mass produced, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying that now, and there's probably people going, "Oh, what are you talking about? There's so many produced in this in America and the UK, And it's like, but yeah, the majority of everything is produced in China.
Yeah.
For both countries.
China, Indonesia. India, Taiwan, yeah,
like foodstuffs, like goods, like on foodstuffs. It's possible that it was already coming. American products like Hershey and Reese's and confectionery products and Oreos were already starting to trickle into the UK.
Yeah,
because when I was a kid,
a lot actually.
When I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Lucky Charms, Mountain Dew, and all that kind of stuff, like all this American stuff, Lipton iced tea, and that was like early 90s. And then when I was like, around the late 90s, it all disappeared. It all just disappeared, like, overnight.
Yeah, I don't understand
like, someone came around all the shops and was, like, rounded all the stuff up, and it was just, like... Because I used to go in my teens, I was like, oh, do you remember Lucky Charms? Do you remember,
That must have been
Mountain
EU
Dew?
regulations
Clamping down on whatever...
down.
Yeah, it was just a big clamp down, I think. And I haven't done the research on that, but I'm sure that's true. But, I mean, Mountain Dew and stuff, it's starting to trickle back in.
Well, you can see that kind of stuff, and you have for years in Britain.
Yeah.
In import stores, specialty stores, right?
Yeah, but they
cost an absolute fortune, though, obviously. Because I think you and I saw a box of Lucky Charms or something in one of the stores, and it was like...
10 quid.
Yeah, maybe like more like 12 or 14.
And it was like one of the smallest boxes, you know.
I mean, it's similar over here, the British imports, but yeah, you did see a lot of American brand names in the regular stores, though.
Yeah.
You know, like you were saying, Oreos just over the last few years have really come in.
No, because I remember when they came in, I was like, late teens, early 20s. Because before that, I was talking to people on the internet, and I was talking to Americans, and they'd say, oh, have you ever had an Oreo?
Yeah. I
had no idea what an Oreo was.
Yeah.
And then it was actually one of those memes that went round, you know, those like questionnaire things.
Oh, yeah.
And it was obviously written by an American because it was like, how do you eat your Oreo?
Oh,
I'd fill it out like, I think you mean Aero. You know?
Yeah.
Like the Aero bars, you know, like Nestle make these chocolate bars called Aero.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, Aero, I just eat it normally. You know? And I was like, oh no, Oreo is like a cookie.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, we don't have that here. But then like a few years later, they started coming in. And it was apparently, they were allowed to do that because they'd found a way to, like, because they use hydrogenated oil.
I was just going to say, I don't know that I've ever seen, and surely you can probably find somebody comparing the two on YouTube or in a blog post or something somewhere, but I'd like to look that up, and if anybody knows offhand where we can find that, send it to us on social media somewhere.
Send a link. Link us to it.
Yeah, because I am curious to see the ingredients of the Oreos in Britain and Oreos in the United States. I'm sure they've
done that before with other products, you know, like Coca-Cola and Heinz ketchup. They've like done memes of like, oh, this is the ingredients list in America, and it's like a page. It's the whole thing, you know,
all
because
things
they've got
you've never heard of,
monosodium glutamate and xanthan gum and all this kind of like stuff, you know, and all these E numbers and whatever in it, you know. Yeah. And whereas Britain is just like, oh, tomatoes, oil, and vinegar,
sugar,
you know, and sugar. Yeah, but it's like high fructose corn syrup, and I mean, everybody who knows what high fructose corn syrup is, it's basically a sugar. It's like an ultra sweet, cheap method of sugar, you know.
Yeah.
That's why you can get
that's terrible for your body.
It's absolutely, I mean, you know, sugar's bad for your body, but that stuff is absolutely terrible for your body. Because it's oil, basically. It's sugary oil.
Yeah.
It's like, they do have it in the it's not banned in the UK, but it's called glucose syrup.
Yeah.
Glucose fructose. I think it's called. And it's very heavily controlled. And I think that might have been by the EU. So when now that we've come out of the EU, who knows if it's like, oh, well, we can just get rid of those regulations, have as much glucose fructose in our cereals and everything as we like. Yeah. We can be as fat as we like. Yeah. You know, it's just like, it's like, oh, great. But I mean, you know, it's that kind of thing, you know. It's like, are they going to do that? As you said, you know, are they going to actually, you know, is someone going to come in and go, nah. Yeah. We'll keep, they knew what they were talking about, the EU.
Well, I was going to say the British public, the majority of the British public, I think, is going to just say no.
We don't want any of that Cool Whip over here, because I mean they're probably like, oh yeah, you know, Cool Whip.
There's going to be some
we
people
can break
who want
into
Cool
the UK
Whip.
Market.
There's going to be some people who want Cool Whip just because they've heard Americans talk about it all the
Cool
time.
Whip.
You know, they're going to want to try it, but when
it was a very sad day for Erica when she couldn't find Cool Whip in Asda.
Oh my god.
Or ready-made pie crusts.
Yes.
Frozen cookie dough.
Frozen pie crust.
Yeah. I mean, with Cool Whip, though, it's just hydrogenated oil, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, you know, another major point of Brexit is travel.
Yeah.
You know, and we were looking
There's
at...
There's some good points and bad points about the travel changes. For us, it's going to be very positive because U.S. residents can now stay up to 6 months in the U.K. without a visa, whereas before we could only stay 3 months. So we get to stay twice as long without needing to have a visa.
Yeah.
Which is good for us because
you have more time.
I'm married to a British person,
and you can stay there half the year. It's just like, yeah, I mean, before we entered the EU, I think it was a 6-month period. And you can stay 6 months, technically, on a visa. Because we found that out when my dad said to me, oh yeah, I've got this thing for 6 months. I could have been... Because he only stayed a month over here when he came.
Oh, yeah, but you have to get a visa. And a visa you have to apply for, and that takes time in itself and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you're allowed to get it once you're already in the country.
Yeah.
I think you have to have it in your passport before you go to the country.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah, due to EU regulations, it's 90 days. And now it's 6 months in the UK. You can go. But, I mean, no one's traveling right now.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah. But that'll be the same. That'll be the same with British people traveling to America. They'll be able to stay here 6 months at a time as well without a visa, which is good.
And that's good.
Although I will say that I have read in the past, and I'm just talking now here because I have not researched this at all, but I remember reading something about because Britain is no longer part of the EU, there may be something or other having to do with the visa waiver program.
Yeah, they'll have to renegotiate terms for that.
And I think America was going to pull out of the visa waiver program or something like that. Maybe that was just had something to do with the Trump administration, though, and I don't know if it'll be the same for Biden. Like I said, I haven't done research on that, but I distinctly remember reading that before and going, "Oh no!"
Yeah, because I mean, if America pulled out of the visa waiver program, you'd have to get like a tourist visa, and that's more headache
to go most everywhere. Yeah,
it will. Yeah,
and everybody would have to get one to come into America. Yeah,
yeah, and it would be a nuisance. So I think that's probably going to be scrapped because, I mean, it's just, you know, a lot more people. I mean, back in, like, I'm going to say, like, pre-1970s, the majority of people didn't fly.
No, not too much.
The majority
of
people didn't go. It was very expensive, but it was also, like, you know, you just didn't think about it. It's like in Britain, it was like, oh, we'll just go to Blackpool for our holidays.
Yeah.
Or we'll just go to Brighton or whatever, you know.
I mean, flying...
And in America, it's still kind of that way, you know. It's like, oh, we'll just take a driving
relatively
trip,
speaking, had not been around that long. So it was still scary to think about, going up into a plane and, you know, you've got to trust it not to crash and stuff, you know. So I think, I think that was part of it also. But anyway, traveling now between
the
Britain,
UK... Yeah. It's going to be a little bit more complicated.
Between the UK and Europe, it's not going to be as easy.
It's not going to be as easy on a British passport, no. Say, like, people... Because, you know, like, my dad was talking about a friend of his that out in Spain. He says, I'm fine because my mother was Irish, so I could get... Or my grandmother was Irish, so I could get a Irish passport. And Ireland is still in
part of the EU.
Yeah. So... That was fine for me.
Yeah.
And I can travel, but it's just going to be like, you know, and you know they're saying, oh no, nothing's really going to change. You'll still be able to go through. It won't be like they'll just stamp your passport and it's like, yeah, no, there'll be severe kind of like
But I wonder if you'll just
checks.
be able to go. Yeah, I wonder if you'll be able to go through as simply as you did before.
Nope.
Yeah, it's going to be more like me,
yeah.
right? You have to, the lines are longer, you have to actually get your passport, like, looked at and everything. It's going to just be more of a nuisance. It's not going to be that big a deal. I mean, these are definitely, you know, first world problems, as they say. But, But it's just going to be more of a nuisance, I would think.
Yeah.
And then you cannot...
And working.
Yeah, I was going to say, will you be able to work?
Yeah,
you'll
have to, that'll require a visa too. It'll be like coming over here, you know.
Yeah.
To you know, whereas people, you know, it's just such a mess. And it was unnecessary. And I feel like the people who voted for it were, you know, just weren't thinking about these problems.
Right.
Because they were living in the UK and they were just like, you know, they did it for like, because, they were sending so much money to the EU and they're not giving any of it back. And it's like, they are. Most of the, like, you know, like most of my town in Wales was regenerated using EU money. You know, it came from the European Union, you know, grants and stuff, you know. So it was like a lot of, and I'd say that's probably true for most of, like, you know, economically depressed places in Britain. It's like, we need money to regenerate this place, make it look a bit better, you know, give it a bit more shops and, you know, drum up a bit more tourism.
Yeah.
You know, Westminster isn't going to give it to us. So let's go to the EU, let's go to Brussels. And, you know, Brussels say, yeah, you know. But, I mean, and of course then there was like the racist reasons. Of like, get the immigrants out and you know, and it's just like... Yeah, but
they're not going to send anybody out, though.
They're not going to send anybody out.
I mean, none of the European countries are going to send the British people back to Britain who are currently living in European Union countries.
Yeah, no.
They're going to be allowed to stay. So Britain's going to do the same thing. You know, they're not going to kick people out who were already living there perfectly legally and everything.
No.
I just think it's so stupid because it's such like a dream of so many Americans to like graduate high school and then have a year traveling around Europe, you know, before they start college.
Do that, yeah.
Or maybe just after they graduate college, have a year traveling around Europe before they start working. And it would be so convenient to be able to work as they travel, you know, make some money to live on while they're traveling and having these experiences and everything. And Britain had that.
People did it. I knew people who did it.
British people could go anywhere
in the EU,
in Europe. I feel like living in Venice for a month.
Yeah,
you know,
Portugal,
let me just go find
Spain, Italy,
let me
France,
find a little job,
Germany.
You know, like in a fish market somewhere, so that I can like see Venice for a month and say that I live there, and then I'll move on to France somewhere.
I'm living my bohemian vagabond lifestyle.
And pick grapes to fund my like life in France for a month, and it's just like it's so awesome that you guys had that available to you, that you could do those experiences perfectly legally without any kind of like, you didn't have to jump through hoops and get all these like visas and you know, because you, first of all, I mean, this is totally going off on a rant now.
Going off on a rant with Erica.
Americans can't even just get a visa to go do that. You can't. You cannot get a visa to go work menial jobs across Europe so that you can fund your travels for a year, you know? There's no visa that exists.
As I said, I foresee a time when Britain is going to re-enter it. Or it's going to be like, coming back cap in hand.
Yeah, it's just such such a shame for British people, I think, for British students and kids who want to have life experiences but can't afford to just go and travel without working. You know, they're really taking something away that British people previously had available to them. In your research, did it mention anything whether the price of travel was going to increase?
Well, no. I mean, that's up to the airlines.
Because I wondered if that didn't have something to do with the countries are all connected. So anywhere, if you're flying from Britain to anywhere in Europe, it's quite reasonably priced because they're all like.
I mean, time will tell.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now that if like airlines started charging so much for a flight, when it used to be 20 quid to fly to Spain, on Ryanair, I can see right now that if it goes up to like 200 or whatever, people will be like, "What? What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
Oh, it was no, mate. It was 50. It was 50 quid round trip last time, and you know it's like that's. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
shame.
Talking about Ireland being part of the EU, because they've got a border with Northern Ireland, which is still part of the UK. Mm-hmm. Northern Ireland is still, for a period, still part of the EU, you know.
What?
Because you know, it's like goods and all that kind of stuff, you know. It's going to be harder for it, you know. Because, you know, it's like the UK will be sending goods to Northern Ireland and stuff like that, and there's still kind of like there's still a land border with Ireland, so they could just be driven down.
Yeah.
And they don't want to harden that border with Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
Because that might be absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So I can, you know, it's still part for a time, mm-hmm. But there's going to come a time when it's like, oh yeah, okay, you know. There needs to be more.
It's all so...
It's a mess.
It's
a bloody mess.
It's so ridiculous. And it's been so easy to kind of forget that all of this was coming with everything that was going on last year. It's complicated.
It's so bloody complicated too, you know.
You know, for the whole of 2020, people were not really traveling. People weren't thinking about this kind of stuff. It was like Brexit was not even on anyone's minds. And now I think maybe as we're starting to slowly come out of this COVID situation, people are starting to realize, all of this stuff has changed now, you know, and it's just going to be, because,
you know, it's left the customs union of the EU, and there's still EU customs, you know, going on. So yeah, with Northern Ireland, it was like, there's a problem there because you know, goods and stuff coming from the UK, you know, are going to a UK territory. And apparently there was, like, something about the soil. Like, British soil can't be taken to Northern Ireland now. From mainland Great Britain because of the EU plants regulations and stuff like that. You know, it's like there's some EU regulation regarding soil.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that can... So
why would it have been taken anyway, then?
Well, you know, people like taking soil to Northern Ireland to, like, do whatever with
it. People just like taking soil to Northern Ireland from Britain.
Yeah, like, you know, like they could need an extra few tons of soil, you know, whatever.
I guess.
It's like, you know, for whatever reason, you know, like, or taking plants over there or whatever, you know, to, like, seeds or whatever it would be. They're going to be subject to the EU customs.
Regulated, yeah.
And it's just like, it's a mess.
That is, oh my God,
Yeah. And it's just going to become more of a mess, because then, like, the fishing rights and everything like that, you know, it's just created a lot of headaches.
Yeah.
And people who are, like, saying, yeah, we Brexited, get over it, you know, it's like, I don't really think and you know, they're going to see the results of the fruits of their labor.
Yeah.
Before too long.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Anyway. As we said, we're not experts, so if you're interested in this topic, you should probably research it yourself.
Yes, head on over and see what the mess is all about.
These are just a few of the points that we were able to find in researching that we thought were interesting for us to talk about. There's a lot more involved, of course. But anyway, we hope you enjoyed this podcast, this topic.
Yep.
And thank you, as always, so much for tuning in. Be sure to follow us on social media. We are at Butty on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Butty.
Yeah, that's it. So thanks so much for your support, and we will talk to you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.